begin with some background information. I have been married for 14 years and have been in the same relationship for a total of 20 years. We have 2 children. Just around 9 months ago, on a Saturday night, my spouse seemed bored while we were at home and suggested we go out for drinks. Personally, I enjoy social drinking, but can easily go without it. During our conversation, my spouse's cousin called, interrupting us, and invited us to a spontaneous family cookout. After ending the call, my spouse expressed disinterest in attending the cookout and left the room with the phone in hand. After a span of 10 minutes, my spouse returned and suddenly decided to head over to the cousin's house. I inquired if he wanted me to accompany him, but he responded that his cousin had explicitly mentioned that no spouses were invited, which struck me as peculiar. Off the auction west, I told him it was fine for him to go and enjoy himself. He left, and around 10 minutes later, he called my phone, asking if I wanted him to come back so he could go out and grab something to eat. I questioned whether he had already reached his cousin's place, which is at least a 35-minute drive away, to which he replied affirmatively. Despite my suspicions, I replied, "No, go ahead and enjoy your time with family." However, sensing that something was amiss, my spouse asked if I was certain about my decision. I reaffirmed my stance, but this time I added a condition stating, "Yes, as long as you're not hanging out with Raymond." Now let me provide some background on Raymond. He's a friend my spouse met at work approximately 5 years ago. I don't particularly like him due to his marital infidelities and his tendency to be involved in various confusing situations. After another approximately 5 minutes had passed, my youngest son expressed his desire for spaghetti for dinner. Realizing that we were out of noodles, I grabbed my keys and swiftly got into the car to head to the grocery store. However, as I was driving, I encountered a roadblock due to a fire and was redirected onto an unfamiliar route. Along the way, I spotted a car that resembled my husband's, but I dismissed the thought, assuming it couldn't possibly be him. I proceeded to the store, gathered the necessary items, and returned to the car. Yet, a sense of unease lingered within me. In that moment, I uttered a prayer, seeking guidance from God and hoping that if something untoward was happening, I would discover the truth. I retraced my route back, following the same path I had taken earlier, and to my surprise, the car that resembled my husband's was still parked there. With around 20 houses on that block, I had no clue which one he could be. Which one could be in? Filled with a mix of anxiety and determination, I decided to call this phone, but he didn't answer. Persistently, I made about 15 more attempts, but there was still no response. Finally, he returned my call, and the background was eerily silent. Maintaining my composure, I calmly inquired about his whereabouts, to which he casually replied that he was just laughing and conversing with family. To confirm his location, I asked him once again about the cousin's address, and he confirmed the same address I was aware of. Sensing the need for concrete evidence, I asked him to hold on and proceeded to take a photograph of his car, sending it to him while we were still on the phone. Ignoring the texts I sent, my spouse's demeanor suddenly shifted, becoming defensive and accusing me of interrogating him. Insisting that he look at the text, he reluctantly did so, only to continue lying and deny that the car in the picture was his. In a desperate attempt to divert the conversation, he demanded to know my location. X-rated. I responded that I was sitting in the front seat of the car that clearly wasn't his. Frustrated, he abruptly hung up and refused to answer subsequent calls. As I anxiously waited for him to respond, my gaze wandered, and I noticed Raymond standing on one of the porches nearby. Determined, I approached him and inquired about the whereabouts of my husband. Raymond began offering senseless excuses, but I stood my ground, firmly stating that I wouldn't leave until my husband emerged. He then claimed that my husband had parked his car there and left with a female cousin, an explanation that made no sense. In the midst of all this, our eldest son drives by and notices me standing there, tears streaming down my face. Naturally, he stops the car and approaches me, eager to find out what's happening. I explained the situation, sharing what Raymond had just revealed to me. Filled with anger, my son immediately dials his father's number, and to my surprise, he answers without delay. In a stern tone, my son confronts his father, urging him to act like a real man, and abruptly ends the call. My son confides in me that he has a strange feeling that something was amiss with his dad due to a conversation he overheard between him and Raymond, instructing me to wait by the car. He strides towards the porch, determined to extract answers from Raymond. Meanwhile, my husband reaches out to me, requesting that I walk a block down the street so we can have a private conversation. I comply with my husband's request and begin walking down the street, expecting to find him waiting for me. However, upon arrival, he is nowhere to be found. It is important to note that it is nighttime, and I am a woman walking alone. I am dressed in workout gear, accentuating my figure, which unfortunately attracts unwanted attention from passing men. They slow down their pace, making inappropriate remarks that leave me feeling fearful and vulnerable. In the midst of this distressing situation, my husband calls me, and with a trembling voice, I inquire about his whereabouts. I share the unsettling encounters I'm facing and express my fear. To my dismay, he simply hangs up the call, leaving me alone and anxious. As I make my way back up the street, towards where my son was standing, I notice he is in tears, but he refuses to disclose the reason behind his distress. Raymond, wearing a smug expression, remains nearby, seemingly reveling in the situation. Suddenly, my husband appears, seemingly coming out of nowhere. An immediate argument ensues between us, escalating quickly. Desperate to avoid the confrontation, he attempts to walk away, but in my emotional turmoil, I reach out and grab him. In a shocking turn of events, he responds by slapping me and hurling demeaning insults my way, calling me a stupid bitch. I am utterly stunned, unable to comprehend that this is the same man I married and once loved, shattered and broken, both physically and emotionally. I crawl towards my car, my spirit crushed. The scene continues to unfold as my son and his father engage in a heated argument, while I am left to grapple with the devastating reality of the situation. Devastated, I drove back home and found myself sitting in the driveway, overcome with tears and sorrow. In the midst of my despair, my son arrives, holding a recording of the conversation he had with Raymond. But to my disbelief and horror, the recording reveals Raymond confessing that he and my husband are engaged in a sexual relationship and claim to be in love. And the revelation feels like a blow to my chest, causing my heart to leap in anguish. Just then, my husband pulls up, and we confront him with the shocking revelation. He vehemently denies everything, accusing Raymond of lying. Throughout the night, our argument rages on, emotions running high. However, the next morning, Raymond sends undeniable evidence, pictures, text messages, and even a video that leave no room for doubt. At this point, my husband can no longer deny the truth. It's in the aftermath of this revelation, these individuals torment me relentlessly bombarding my phone with messages and calls. They laugh at my misery, cruelly taunting me, asserting that I deserve every bit of pain I am experiencing. There have been moments where I felt utterly hopeless, questioning whether I could endure such anguish. Fast forward to the present moment, and I have come to discover that my husband never ceased communication with either of them. Despite all the pain and betrayal, I find myself still loving him. When I entered into marriage, my love for him knew no conditions. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Rate in the comments what you think about the story.